Welcome back, and today we are going to be playing out the Swedish Gripen. It has the RB99s, which are actually A120s, and not the R-Darters. The R-Darters did get a little bit of a buff. I will get into them in a future video. But for today, we are going to be playing the Gripen in a way that the difference won't really be that noticeable. We are going to be playing close range, dogfights, and basically we are going to be running it down on the BVR players, because they honestly have no clue what to do once you actually close the gap. And the Gripen is perfect for this. When we flew the Su-27, I of course talked about the R-77 being pretty bad on the Su-27 because it doesn't have much range. And while this is a massive handicap when you have a plane like the Su-27, because it's actually kind of bad at close range, funnily enough, yes, it has R-73s with thrust vectoring, but the airframe is still among the worst. When it comes to anything that kind of involves dogfighting, the airframe just isn't really there, and the Su-27 is made to keep people at arm's length. The Gripen, on the other hand, is completely built around the fact, or at least in War Thunder, roping people in close range, absolutely dunking on them, and going for the next guy. It's great in 2v1s, it's great in 3v1s even. It is just such a good package, and this one with the A120s really doesn't have many major drawbacks. The absolute amount of countermeasures, the fuel efficiency on the afterburner, the size of it. The real main drawback is the amount of missiles and the gun, but the gun normally isn't that much of an issue. The gun on this thing is actually kind of needed because, well, you play around it quite frequently, at least if you play it in this way, which I think is the most fun way to play. Just running it down on the deck and trying to force the old meta on people that are trying to play the new meta. So what I would do is I would basically rush directly into them by going to the right, aggro as many people at the same time as possible, and then just try to dogfight them. F-15Cs, F-16Cs, Su-27s, God forbid it's a MiG-29 SMT, an F4F, or even a Tornado. These planes just really don't hold a candle to you, and you absolutely wax them. Now, a plane like the F-16AM in the French tech tree is actually kind of dangerous because the airframe performance is actually quite similar to this thing, but you still hold the edge, and if you are the better player, you are definitely going to be winning. And speaking about dogfights, here you have quite a long one. It's like a 1v3 at one point, and I had to open the door. I'm like away for 30 seconds. And the team has already basically died. Now this time I wasn't really able to come in, be aggressive at the start. This time I came in quite late and I have to kind of clean up after the game that my teammates have created. R-73 is turning into a little bit of a fidget spinner. And we are now dogfighting the Su-27. Now the Su-27 really doesn't concern me much. We have 6 minutes of fuel. It's an Su-27, we pre-flare, we have enough countermeasures, and this guy really is not going to be accomplishing much. However, he has a teammate who is not actually dogfighting us right now. He's actually trying to stay away from us. You can tell that I'm not even looking at the Su-27 for the most part. We shoot the missile off, we go into a notch, the second plane comes in, and he's shooting AIM-9M, so I'm thinking that he doesn't have any AIM-120s left, or he might not have them altogether. So I just want to get him out of the game. I go a little bit suicidal, but I need to be aggressive. First F-15 goes down, second one gets kind of stolen, and then the Su-27 that's been on R6 from the very start of this fight is about to overshoot, and I will get the shot right here. Unfortunately for this clip, my teammate ends up licking him up just before I have the ability to clean him up myself. Now I can go into a notch here, but I want to be a little bit more aggressive, so I'm going to use the multipad effect. It does hit us basically directly below us. We almost get killed by the splash damage. But now I'm actually able to just kind of pitch up to him. RB99 is out. He doesn't notch properly. And he ends up catching it directly with his forehand. Thank you very much. Now you can tell that I'm not really trying to create distance. I'm really just trying to get up until people's faces and rub my balls on their nose. And that is really my preferred playstyle to play top tier anyway. But with a plane like this, it's actually kind of funny. Now we lock onto this, presumably F-16, if I remember it correctly. And he's already kind of notching us, so there's not really a chance that this missile will reach him. Or actually hit him, because he's already notching. But by shooting from the side, he's notching my missile, but he's now forced to fly directly into the missile that's coming from his front. And he ends up kissing it, so we might not have killed him. But indirectly we made it so that he's forced to headbutt the other one. Or try to go cold, and if he goes cold on that missile, well, guess what? He ends up dying to mine. So he really was locked in completely. We start going into the notch on the F-15 coming from my left. And that's a nice little double kill. Now we dive into the terrain and we loop around the map. And the game is already essentially over. But just for the completionist sake of things, I just want to show you all the other engagements as well. F-16 comes in, we kind of go off ball, we shoot the missile off, we turn out. He doesn't turn out enough, he ends up eating it. And then we spot an F-15 at low altitude orbit. Now we lock him up with an AIM-9M, and keep in mind that we are going to be shooting it upwards. But if you watched my radar missile guide, you know what I said about the MAR and what altitude does opposed to gravity. So we use the booster of the rocket motor to actually get it into thinner air, and especially in the gliding phase, it drastically increases the range, and we just set them on fire. Now this map here is absolutely perfect when it comes to these missiles and this plane. You pop up over the mountain, you lock everyone up, and you just kind of cut straight through the enemy team. When I get this map, I always go straight through the middle, and I collect 2, 3, sometimes 4 kills, and I have another example at the end of this video with the tech view kind of thing, the sensor view. And I want you to see just how much havoc I create here by simply flying straight in, popping on over the mountain, launching all my missiles, and then just kind of turning with everyone. Now I am not necessarily going to dogfight them all, but I'm getting all these people on my 6, and I'm low enough, I have enough flares to really contest everything they shoot at me. So we just make sure that all flares actually fool their R-73s. We get low enough to defeat the R-27 or the R-77. We rope them in a little bit, and then we start turning in. Now we turn in, we flare the first missile, then we notch the second missile, and we lose control. Now that's not very ideal, and you definitely want to have your periodical countermeasures on while you do this. And now he dies. The guy behind us is about to turn in, and we are gonna just loop straight into him. We're gonna pre-flare just so that he can't R-73 us with his HMD. He dies as well because he's locked in with us. And just like that, we've killed 3, distracted 2, with very minimal losses. And then the 6th guy comes in, we dodge his Vulcan, and he runs away. We are not gonna be able to kill him, but he does end up dying just a little bit later. Now this is one of the earlier games that I did, and I wasn't really going straight in just yet, but I am going to be utilizing the terrain for the majority of the gameplay, because I'm simply just looking to kind of multipath, but rather than multipathing, I'd rather actually just stay completely out of sight by being behind hard cover. You can tell I'm running min view with a drop tank, and I'm going to be as aggressive as humanly possible. I did die a decent amount doing this, because I am putting myself in probably the worst spot to be in. But I also won a hell of a lot of games, simply because I just kept the entire team busy. And sometimes I would just 3v1, and that is an instance right here. We start off just skimming the mountains, popping on over, shooting our missiles off, and trying to stay in cover. He is not going to be dodging that, he is severed, he is dead, and we stay in the terrain. F-15 pops on over the mountain. We queue up an AIM-9M because it's a side aspect. He's going into a bit of a notch. He's not really paying attention to us. We don't need to one in with the RWR. We shoot off the RB-99 on the other guy. Unfortunately, the F-15 dies before we hit him. And the other guy actually goes into the terrain just like we are and defeats our missile. Another missile goes out. It doesn't actually connect. And I'm just in the thick of it. I'm not going super fast, but we do get on the 6 of another player. We shoot off our Fox 3. And if you have seen my radar missile guide, you know that simply going cold in the MAR is not going to be saving you. If the missile is within the MAR and you only go cold, that missile will reach you. You're not going to be defeating it. Going cold is to outrun the missile. Going cold, or flying away if you aren't familiar with the term, isn't going to save you from a Fox 3. You need to start notching it, unless you're far away enough to actually turn around and simply drain it of all its speed. He definitely didn't have that ability, because we shot it from like 2 kilometers away from behind, and he's never gonna be outrunning that one, and he ends up kissing it directly with his ass. And you can tell that right now we are staying low, we're trying to stay out of sight. There's like 3 or 4 guys here, and we are coming in over the mountain. I shoot off my missile, and the first missile gets instantly defeated by the F-15 going to the terrain, which is good on his end. We go low, we defeat the missile as well. And looking at this situation right here, I want to commit to this fight as fast as possible. Now I hadn't actually shot the gun yet, so don't bully me about my aim. I'll redeem myself at the end of the game. I promise. So we dive on this F-15, I get a bit of a Mac cloud, not able to pull enough lead, not really able to see where my gun is going, and I simply whiff the shot. The other F-15 is now turning around and he's chasing my Gripen. He shoots down the Gripen, but he's now relatively slow, and we should be able to kill him here relatively easily. But we miss everything yet again, and this time I'm not compressing, I don't have an excuse with the Mac cloud. I simply just miss. I then don't have the ability to pull in because I actually lose control. And the other F-15 is not engaging me right now, so I'm able to just be as aggressive as humanly possible and make sure that this guy dies and doesn't make it till the end of the game. Now the F-15 goes down, the other 3 guys are actually RTB, and we do the same thing. We RTB, we get our missiles back, and we are now in a 3 or a 4v1, I'm not actually entirely sure, but the first guy is on our radar, and I'm not going to shoot at long range. I'm just going to wait for this guy to get a little bit closer, just so that I'm very confident that this missile will definitely reach him no matter what he does. And if he doesn't know how to notch, he's going to be catching that one. Now, unfortunately for us, he's actually aware of how to defeat the missile. He simply turns around and he defeats it. And this is why I like shooting at closer ranges, because it makes it much harder for the enemy to actually dodge them. The cloud here is definitely not helping us. So I'm going into the HMD mode instead of the TWS. And I just want to see if I can find him by spam clicking through the mountain. Not really able to, so we go back to the TWS. We don't go to the super wide scope because I'm trying to have a little bit of a higher update frequency. So I can see if I can find him a little bit easier. But he shoots another missile at us, and because of that diamond right there, I know exactly where he is. So we pop on over the mountain, we lock him up, we shoot the missile off while going a little bit off board. We go into the terrain, and his missile isn't able to track us, and my missile is definitely able to track him, and he's not very happy about it in chat, and he ends up headbutting it directly with his forehead, which is great for us. Now I get a little bit of altitude here. I know I can play it safe and be stealthy, but they have a rough idea of where I am, and I have no idea where they are. There's 2 of them left, one is an F-15, and I'm not entirely sure what the other one was because I simply just forgot. So we are able to lock onto one of them. It says F-15, and I know that the other guy is somewhere in this area as well. Where he is exactly, I got no clue. But then he pops up on the right. It's an F-16, and I'm gonna assume that it's an F-16C. So I go into the HMD mode just so he's not able to get an RWR spike from me. And he's flaring, but not really maneuvering. And if you don't maneuver with the AIM-9M, guess what? You straight up die. If you haven't seen yet and you want to know how to flare the IRCCM missiles, I made a video on that as well. Now I want to get a little bit of separation from the main airfield because I don't want him to have the ability to simply turn around and start camping it. I want to draw him out a little bit so I have more of a window to actually fight him. And if he does mess up, he doesn't have the ability to simply turn around and get protected by the SAM sites and the Veeks. So we get a little bit of altitude just to see if we can find him. This guy definitely has his radar on, so I'm just kind of waiting for the RWR ping, and there it is. Now we roll on over, we see him spotted over there, and we start hugging this mountain over here. And I don't really need to risk the head-on engagement with the missile. I simply just wait for the merge behind the mountaintop, and then we turn right after him. And yes, he will outrun us if he wants to run. But keep in mind that we are on 9 minutes of fuel and he just took off. So he's kind of forced to do something here because we will outperform him quite vastly. And otherwise, I still have RB99s to kind of shoot at him from behind. Now, F-15C, of course, has no chance in the dogfight. And we simply just turn his plane into spare parts with approximately all of our cannon rounds. Now, he is severed and technically he is dead. But this damage model right here is a little bit laughable because I'm just trying to get my kill in. Now I'm not able to lock him through the clouds, so we select the RB99 and we shoot one of them. That's a hit. So we shoot a second one. That's a hit. And finally, he does finally end up going down. Now keep in mind, with this Gripen, especially the one with the MRAMs, and this one, the RB99s, you're still able to play this at range. You still have 4 good missiles, you have 2 good backup missiles. Now the heat seekers you don't really use much unless you play this way. But you have to keep in mind that this thing is just as strong at long range as something like an F-16. Now sure, it's not as fast and the acceleration isn't as good, but the maneuverability, the countermeasures and everything in this package still make it very good at BVR. And then if you do close the gap, it is still going to rinse you. This thing still is kind of a baby plane. It is still kind of stupid in terms of how well it performs. But in the current meta with the F-15C, for example, I still think that the F-15C is better for the average matchmaker, mainly because you have more missiles, you have more speed, you have more acceleration, you have a very strong radar, and overall it's a very good package. Now it's not as good when it comes to like the close range engagements, but it's still up there. Now it is slightly worse than the F-16C when it comes to like dogfighting, but dogfights are kind of dead in the current matchmaker unless you play a plane like this that is kind of built for it, and even then your mileage may vary, because very often you're still not gonna end up very well off just because it doesn't fit the current matchmaker. It doesn't really work, and I make it kind of work, but of course you also don't see the examples where I just end up eating shit because it's 1v5 and I just get overwhelmed. It does happen. Don't get fooled by the power of YouTube, where I cut together all the nice little clips and you don't see the times where it all went wrong. Now, overall, I have like an 80% win rate. It went very, very well, mainly because I'm distracting people, but I've just been dying an awful lot because I just get engaged from 6 angles at once. And that's just something that you have to learn to live with if you are doing what I am doing on the screen right here. Now we merge with the F-15J. We use the terrain. Now, this guy doesn't have a chance in a dogfight, and because I am using the terrain to block all his missiles, he doesn't really have a chance to ever shoot me down. The AIM-120 and the AIM-9M, even with the HMD, are simply not gonna be cutting it like an R-73 would in a very close range dogfight. Now we instantly get on the 6 and I just kind of hold the trigger down. We set like 3 or 4 fires on him and finally he ends up going down. Now here is a very exemplary starting. I rush to the right, I come up over the hills, I shoot off my missiles and I dive back into the terrain. Now we are just gonna wait for them to come close to us. I'm gonna be defeating the missiles. I wanna wait just a little bit longer so that they don't know where I pop up. And I know there's a little bit of a valley right here, like an indentation on the mountain area. So I can use that as a little bit of a path to cut through their team. I pop on over and I see no one. But then I see the first dot. So we are gonna be locking him up at the HMD. We lock him up with the RB99. We shoot it off and we instantly go into a notch. Now if he wants to return fire, well, he's not gonna have a very good time. He ends up eating it, and I merge with the second guy. So we shoot off the missile, a little bit too off-bore, and it still hits, because it's, of course, an MRAM, and these things are ridiculous once they have some speed in them. Third guy comes in, I kind of lose him in the clouds, and we just kind of go into a flat turn. Now, I do want to keep looking around. I want to keep a look on my RWR, because I don't want to overstay my welcome here, because I know that there is a very big likelihood of more people coming in a little bit later, but there aren't, so we kind of pitch on after this F-15. This guy behind us just, he misses everything. We end up hitting him with a flare, which would have been funny if he J'd out or something and just gave me the kill that way. And the F-15 over there on the right below us is not going to be doing anything. He's trying to fly away or something, I'm not entirely sure. We take his wing apart. And then the guy on the deck is going to try to pull back in, I think, but he gets engaged by someone else and he ends up eating shit. Not that he would have done much, because, well, he's very low energy, low to the deck, but I am looking for new paid actors. That F-15 made it very obvious that he wasn't actually trying to kill me. So I'm gonna fire him and I'm looking for new people to get paid to get shot down by me. Now, if you are looking for a position, send an email to iamverygullible@hotmail.com and I'll get in touch with you. I do hope it's obvious that that was a joke, right, guys? Because I've seen some comments lately and people just don't seem to pick up on them. So here's my disclaimer. And we do the same thing again. We go straight in, we notch the missile, we shoot the RB99, they don't notch in return and they die. You kind of play this thing the same way that we used to do with the ILCCM meta, where everyone stayed on the deck. And the Gripen in that sense is still a baby plane. It is still great to fly. You don't really need much of a thought process going on. You need to, of course, go for the right targets. You need to, of course, be defensive when you need to be. And most of the time, you should prioritize survival over getting an extra kill. And then you should have pretty decent results. But keep in mind that it is kind of repetitive in the same way that BVR is. And it's not really down to multipath, the Fox trees. It's mainly just the map sizes, the distribution of the objectives. We just shot his missile out of the air with our own. And, you know, just the gameplay loop in itself just forces this kind of gameplay where everyone just kind of suicides into the middle of the map. Now I do have to admit, at the start of the patch, I did kind of enjoy it, just the BVR for a little bit. It is kind of boring, it's kind of repetitive, but this also is kind of repetitive, and it's not really down to BVR or within visual range or dogfighting at this tier. It's just how the game is set up, and everyone is looking to grind everything as fast as possible. Everyone is very much obsessed with RP, and I get it. Like, personally, I of course don't need to grind much, because I get most things off Gaijin, or from Gaijin. But I do understand the struggle. But you guys should also understand that I used to play this game the same way you guys did, without getting any support from Gaijin, and even back then, I played the game to play the game, not to unlock the next thing. Because if you are playing this game to unlock the next thing, you're never going to be satisfied, and you're not going to have the best gameplay. Getting the most amount of RP is not always the most fun. Getting good games in, winning dogfights, and getting better at the game is much more fun, and in the long run will actually net you more RP as well. The missile that I just shot at that guy, he's gonna outrun it and he's gonna die to someone else. That's why I cut the clip. And we are gonna be engaging someone else. We have an F-16 that is nowhere to be seen, but he's shooting missiles at us, and I'm gonna be using, you guessed it, the terrain. I love Veiny Cock map because there's terrain everywhere. In truth, I hate this map because, well, you can't really guess where anyone is going, because at the start of the game, everyone goes everywhere. There's 3 on the right, there's 3 in the middle, there's 3 at high altitude, there is 3 on the all the way on the left, and there's like a few guys that come in from a weird ass angle because no one knows where to go. Now with this plane, it doesn't really matter because you can adapt to virtually any situation, but in most planes, it is pretty damn annoying. Now with a plane like the Gripen, finding 1 or 2 stragglers is actually very beneficial, and after sitting in the terrain for a little bit, the F-16 actually kind of lost us. So what do? We get close to him, we have 1 MRAM left, and once we get close enough and we see that he isn't notching but he's actually turning away from us, well, what do? You shoot it directly after him. And as I said earlier, going cold when you are this close is not gonna be enough, and flaring it definitely isn't going to help. So he goes down and we start engaging the next guy. F-15 comes in, we turn out, we defeat his missile, he does not defeat ours, but he shoots a second one, so we now need to dodge one from the front, from the right and the rear. So we go for the all-reliable multi-pad directly into the ground. Now we notch one of the missiles, we dodge the other one, we then fly away, and we get nothing done throughout the rest of that match. Now I'm sorry that I'm cutting these clips so short, but I just have too much footage, and I don't want this video to become an hour long. Merge with the F-15, use the terrain, hug the terrain, and the second you get past the merge, he's dead. It is that easy. Just look how effortlessly I get on this guy 6. Now he does cut throttle and he tries to reverse me. It's not gonna work, but it didn't matter what he did because he was going to die in that position. He goes down and we go to the next one. Now here we have the last clip of today, and as I said, sensor view. We are gonna come on over the hill, we lock onto the first guy, we shoot off the missile, shoot the missile at the second guy, and we start going to the right and start using the terrain a little bit in case missiles are being shot our way. Right now there aren't, but I want to just prepare for it, so the second I shoot it off I can go into the mountain and start defending myself. That's kill number 3. Mr. number 4 comes in and we instantly turn out. Now they are gonna start shooting at me of course, because I just killed 4 of their guys at the very start of the game with 4 of my missiles. So this opener here is absolutely perfect. Now I am using the sensor view here to give you a little bit of a demonstration. It is kind of cluttered, but it is mostly about juggling their balls and not getting stuck on one enemy. As long as you keep your speed, you should be somewhat okay. F-16 comes in, full speed, kind of overshoots, flies somewhere else, but we need to keep the pressure on. Mr. Bruno Plays is now gonna be going up after my teammate. Very predictable. We crit him, but we don't actually end up killing him. Missile comes in, we fool it, we notch it, goes into the ground. My teammate, however, is not gonna be as lucky and he eats it directly on top of his head. Guy on the right, guy in front of us, and there's also the crit F-16 that is somewhere in the area. So we merge with him, we look forward, we dodge his rounds, we dodge his missiles. We start defending to the guy that's behind us, but he's very slow and he's damaged, so I don't really have to pay too much attention to him. And then the MiG-29 SMT turns back in, but you can tell the little shockwave, so he is going supersonic. However, we have Mr. Bruno Plays on our 6, and he is going to be shooting his missiles at us. Now we are going to be using the terrain again, and we are going to build up a little bit of speed. I see the little island thingy in front of us, and I'm going to be using it to merge with this F-16. I don't want to deal with his AIM-9Ms, I don't want to deal with his AIM-120s, so I just kind of cut in. I make it pretty close. Now if he had shot the missile there, it wouldn't have pulled in, so I would be completely safe. And then we merge with the F-16C, and we just go into a bit of a flat turn and into a spiral. And he doesn't have anyone near the speed to do this. We are going 900, look at his speed. He's basically falling out of the air. Then we go vertical, and that is all she wrote. Thank you all for watching. You'll see me in the next one.